Welcome back. The Justice Department is suing Colorado for offering in-state tuition and financial aid for the more than 6,000 illegal immigrants attending public colleges and universities there. It's one of more than a dozen states that have faced similar lawsuits.
A top DOJ official accusing Colorado of not putting American students first, saying, quote, "Our litigation efforts will not cease until we have fulfilled President Trump's promise that illegal aliens will not obtain preferential treatment over our nation's own citizens."
Here to respond is the Democratic governor of Colorado, Jared Polis. Governor, so great to see you. Thank you for coming on. I know where you stand on all of this, but I'm wondering, do you understand, what do you say to people who, federal taxpayers pay tens and hundreds of billions of dollars every year that go to universities? And if you're an out-of-state student, you wind up getting less preferential treatment than an illegal alien in your state who gets in-state tuition at the fine universities in Colorado. Do you understand why people think that that's unfair?
Well, first of all, if you're not American, you don't get Pell, you don't get U.S. student loans. Those are by far the two biggest affordability programs. You don't get any of that if you're not American. Only American citizens can get those affordability programs. In-state tuition here at University of Colorado at Boulder, where I'm recording this program, I see our beautiful Flatiron Mountains in the background, is $15,000 a year. So without student aid, that's what families have to come up with to do that. It's up to each state to decide who is a Coloradan, who's a Texan, who's an Oklahoman. Of course, it's up to the United States of America to decide who's an American, but there's a big difference there, right? Like, you have to be in Colorado 6 months and a day, and then you have to pay taxes in Colorado. That's an example. Other states have slightly different criteria. So we have the ability as a state decide who is a resident of our state for taxes, for in-state tuition, for a variety of purposes, and that's an important constitutional principle.
Well, you talked about the Constitution, Governor. So 8 U.S. Code 1623, which is a code that explains very clearly that illegal aliens will not be, to Charlie's point, eligible for tuition benefit over American citizens who are paying a higher cost coming from outside of the state. And therefore, DOJ is arguing this is the violation of that code, which is very interesting because it stems from a president who was a Democrat. This is Bill Clinton, 1996, this statute, and it sort of highlights just how far the Democrat Party has shifted on illegal immigration.
Well, I mean, that's a strange argument. The first state to do in-state tuition for undocumented folks was Texas, and they had it for 25 years. Theirs was struck down in court. Red states and blue states do this because, again, we have kids that grew up here, and because the federal government has not gotten immigration in order, because they failed to secure our border, because they failed to have, we have the DREAM Act that might cover some of them, or, those sorts of things. We do the best we can with people that are Texans, with our Coloradans, that are New Yorkers or Oklahomans. So in our state, of course, if you live here, and that means, in this case, you went to high school here, you were here 3 years, you're a resident of Colorado, right? And that's whether you're a green card holder, whether you're, from Texas or Mexico or wherever you're from, you're a Coloradan. States determine that. And your future's in our state. You probably plan to live your career in our state. And we treat in-state students the same, and we don't, check with the federal government. That's the prerogative of states to decide who's a resident of our state for in-state tuition. But again, if you aren't documented, if you aren't American, you don't get any of the assistance packages, Pell, student loans, any of those things. You're simply not eligible. So, you're not only having a hard time coming up with the $15,000, but my goodness, if you have that potential to be a future engineer, to help develop our future, we want you here in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, I understand how you're defending it. I think most Americans look at what you're doing and say, a kid from Arizona should have precedence of lower tuition over somebody who's not even a citizen. But let's move on, because your party is facing a lot of issues right now. One of them is the issue of socialism, and we're seeing some prominent sort of establishment members of your party saying, I'm not part of that. We don't really believe in socialism. And those young kids who are saying they're for socialism and communism, they're not with us, and we need to get them out of the party. I would suggest, Governor, that actually the young people are just being a lot more honest about the policies of your party versus the establishment. So you tell me, what is the position of the Democrat Party, and how do people like you, who are part of the establishment, going to deal with the young kids who are being very out and proud with their socialism?
Well, first of all, I don't think Bernie Sanders is a young kid. He's older than President Trump. It's,
Fair enough.
It's not really an age-related thing.
Enough.
But socialism is a failed economic theory. As Democrats, if we care about things like universal health care, which I do, and making child care more affordable, the only countries that are able to do that are capitalist market economies. I mean, you look, for instance, the countries in Europe, in the European Economic Union. To be in the EU, you have to have a market economy. They do not allow socialist countries. When Bulgaria and Romania applied, EU said you have to privatize some of your state-owned businesses to be able to join. And to have that prosperity that allows for that strong social safety net is an important part of what Democrats believe, and it's an important part of why we need to push back against socialists.
So you make a very funny and correct point about Bernie Sanders. He is an old guy. He's also a multimillionaire. But it is alarming, and I think that just based on what you're saying right there, you share our concerns about the degree to which socialism has taken over, in particular young people. And when you go back and look at the late 80s and the early 90s, and you see the people that came from the former Soviet bloc countries, that revolution against communism was led by young people. And I'm just wondering what it is that you think has kind of taken root among young people that they find this, the communism, socialism, so appealing.
Well, look, it's important to talk about what socialism is, right? It's government owning the means of production, meaning government owning shares in companies, owning entire companies. This is what I've sounded the alarm about some of the actions that this current president, President Trump, has taken, literally buying shares, 10% of Intel. The government owns 15% of MP Materials, Department of Defense. They have a golden share in U.S. Steel that gives them governance rights. These are aspects of socialism. Here's why it's damaging. When you have the same entity that regulates the economy, that tries to promote a level playing field for all, but is also a player on the field that owns companies, that calls into question the integrity of the government to be able to treat all private sector actors equally. And that's exactly what's happening now with some of the socialist policies that some people are whispering in the president's ear, and I hope he can resist that.
Well, what's fascinating about this specific rise in democratic socialism is how alarming the anti-Semitism comes with it. You, Governor, are the first Jewish governor of the great state of Colorado, but yet many in this group would want a person like yourself out of office. What's your message to them?
Well, first of all, these are two different things. Socialism is a failed economic theory. We need to push back against it. Republicans do, Democrats do in their own parties. Anti-Semitism is wrong across the board. It's singling out one group of people who happen to be Jewish, and treating them worse or discriminating against them. I'm sure there's both non-socialists and socialists that might be anti-Semitic. It's wrong on all sides. We've certainly seen a rise of it over the last few years. There were brutal anti-Semitic attacks just a few blocks from where I'm recording this last summer here in Boulder, Colorado. And it's something that we need to talk about. Look, America's for everybody. It doesn't matter your faith, your background, your race. It's for everybody. Nobody should be singled out or hated on just because of what they believe.
But are you alarmed? I mean, here in New York, where Rachel, Charlie, and I are sitting, you had a slew of Democratic Socialist candidates. One of them, the Darliza Avila Chevalier, who was literally the day after October 7th out there rallying against Israel. We've got these socialist influencers, Hassan Piker, who is spewing this. I mean, it just seems, Governor, that the Democrats like yourself, who are sane and based in common sense, would want to highlight that there is, whether you want to admit it or not, an intersection between these socialist candidates and anti-Semitism.
Well, it's important to condemn anti-Semitism on the left or the right. I mean, you look at some of the things that commentators like Tucker Carlson are saying, terribly anti-Semitic, threatening
Tucker Carlson isn't in charge of the Republican Party, though. That's the problem. And your party has been taken over by these people.
This person whose name, well, hold on. This person whose name you just said is one I've never even heard before. So they're certainly not in charge of the Democratic Party either. Look, I'm a Jewish American, and let me say my successor, who was elected in a Democratic primary last week in Colorado, also happens to be a Jewish American. I think that, again, Americans across the board really believe that people are the same and judge people on their acts and their character, not on their faith or religion. There's an exception, and of course, that should be condemned on both sides. There should be no ability for anti-Semitic people to have, their ideas in the mainstream on the Democratic or Republican Party. I strongly believe that, and that's something we should always remain on the guard against. It's the same with racist views against Black Americans, against Hispanic Americans. This is not who we are as a people. We're a country that is a melting pot and really wants to accept the contributions and thoughts of people, no matter what background, race, or religion they are.
Yeah, well, I want to tell you, Governor, I'm old enough to remember when Bernie Sanders was alone as a socialist in your party. He was very isolated, and he now is, I think, the leader, the mentor of a very large, growing number of socialists. We saw this primary with 35 of them winning from the DSA. So we shall see. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope we can continue to have more conversations with you.
Thank you, Governor Polis.
Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.